Chapter 8, Master Plan. With Taya and her people safe from Marik, Joey and friends decide to try and turn the tables on the Empire. The enraged Marik has been driving his troops hard, so hard that much of his army has fallen behind. Sensing an opportunity, Joey plans to strike at Marik from behind, cutting him off from the rest of his army. The only problem is that they must defeat Marik and get him isolated from his army before the rest of it shows up. Red 2 standing by, all for lit and in the green. Welcome back to YuGiOh the Falsebound Kingdom, and we need to take our best teams into this one. I can finally put some items on Taya's team. So, we will put a Book of Secret Arts, we will put Gift of the Mystical Elf, Mesmeric Control. Lowers the attack points. That could be worth trying someday, but we'll see what happens. Now we probably need to get a Swords of Revealing Light in there too. Bliss of Moonlight is okay, but admittedly you're going to have a better time with Violet Crystal. So there's that. Aquamador. I'll put the Book of Secret Arts on it, but that's just to power it up a little bit. So we'll put a little extra healing on this one. So Taya's team should be alright for keeping itself healed. So that moves by flying because it's got aerial for some reason. I'll probably take Giselle with me. Giselle's team is doing alright, all things considered. In all fairness, Illusionist Faceless Mage isn't doing a lot. It holds up alright, but I really would need to have Giselle's team face somebody at night. But then again, I'll take him with me. I'll take you, actually. Taya can probably sit this one out, and I will bring Giselle to guard the base, like I've been doing before. It's going to be a little tough because we don't quite have the best magic available. Mai's team is going to be very useful. Mai will continue being really handy. Don't know if Giselle has... What could I put in place of Illusionist Faceless Mage? What are my best leveled monsters? Probably Cannon the Sword Mistress. Maybe Hunter Spider? Orion hasn't got his special attack, but Orion would be useful. Gaia Kateno Megami is just a good crutch character to have on any team. But I'll leave that for now. I'll leave things as they are for now, and then we will take on whatever the next battle has to throw at us. I hope I'm not making a mistake.
Yeah! Our plan worked! It's not over yet. We need to defeat the rest of these trailing units before Marik gets back.
Alright, so we have to defeat all the enemies here, and we certainly can't let time run out. Because if we do, Marik will come back as Yami Marik and we'll be in a lot of trouble. What have we got coming in hot here? Giselle should probably take care of that one. Then what else have we got coming in at us? Alright, so we are straight into a rumble pretty much off the bat. Dragon Seeker, fairly capable opponent. Hunter Spider, alright. So, shouldn't be too challenging, all things considered. Have we got any healers? I haven't really had to deal with very many enemies that use items, in all fairness. It's a little unusual. But... okay, so I think that's around about the main damage range for Hinatama. It probably gets a little bit less useful as time goes on, but it's good to just finish off your opponents. And wow! Yeah, Dharma Cannon's probably better off attacking, in all fairness. Hinatama's nice to just finish wounded opponents. But... well, let's make mincemeat of these guys, basically. We are actually getting near the end of Joey's story. There are only 10 chapters in Joey's story, and admittedly it ends in a fairly predictable place. That's right, we already know that the battle at Mariarden is where it finishes. We know that Joey is going to wind up facing Kaiba's army. We know what's going to happen to Giselle and Malairica. They're dead. We've basically been spending this time developing doomed characters because they just wind up getting executed, which is pretty sad. But that's just the way it goes. Sometimes the characters you do like wind up dying, which is, well, it's unfortunate to put it lightly. They do wind up sometimes having those characters that just are too cool to keep living. They're just really awesome, really interesting, but they don't get to stick around. And then the one that's really, really annoying, you do have to put up with for the rest of the adventure. Like, it's one of my big bugbears with Fire Emblem Fates. Never mind the crummy translation and things like that, the way Intelligent Systems treated Scarlet gets on my nerves to this day. It's a sore point. Okay, Azura deserved to be able to hang around in the best ending. Why didn't they give Scarlet the opportunity? I mean, I didn't like Izana that much, so I suppose I wasn't too fussed when he died. But poor Scarlet just gets thrown to the wayside. You don't even get the opportunity to try and save her, to do something important. In Conquest, she gets butchered off screen. And all her death does, is prove something we already know, that Hans is just a massive piece of... well, I'm trying not to swear, I will just say he's a massive piece of. Okay, so we got six units. Where should I send Tristan? So a Shizu, I'll probably have to have my face as Shizu. Most of these are flyers, which means if she's got... good, there are no major defenses. We can just sort of potter around, really. Let's see. So, Odeon will have to take out as well. That team's going to be tough. Tristan should probably take that one. But yeah, poor Scarlet. She's only in the Revelations for 2 chapters. Pretty much 2 chapters, and then she dies. What makes it even nastier is that you can marry her and have a kid with her at that time, and the kid has to watch their mother die and be reanimated. Like, it's just... I don't know why they did it. They just seem to have done it for the sake of having Scarlet suffer. And I find it so frustrating. I really think she deserved better. I think she's an interesting character with some really nice personality elements. She's got that sort of classic spunky tomboy attitude, but she's also a really brilliant artist. She makes mosaics and decorates her armor with her mosaics. She's also apparently quite a skilled stargazer. She's pretty good at picking out the constellations in the night sky. It's just, she doesn't get the opportunity to actually develop, which is beyond annoying. As far as I'm concerned, anyway. quite a few of the characters, admittedly, in Hoshido don't really get to develop. Which, well, I tend to think it's rather sad. They could have been interesting, but a lot of them just kind of fall by the wayside as far as I'm concerned. They're just sort of there. I don't find a lot of them particularly interesting. I do find a lot of Conquest's cast, by contrast, rather interesting. A bit quirky, a bit strange. But overall, I do find them to be the more interesting characters. I mean, Conquest has a strong story, well, okay, no, I won't say it's got a strong story, because it's still got the problem that it relies on everyone clutching the idiot ball and running the length of the field for a touchdown. It's got the better gameplay. Hoshido's story is probably slightly better on account of the fact that it's actually just stereotypical good versus evil, and it's kind of hard to stuff that up even if we have heard it a million times. Oof. Well, let's get going. Let's wrap this up. So yeah, I really do wish that they actually had some better opportunities for the characters, and I can actually go into something YuGiOh related once we get to the next battle. Let's skip to it. Mystical Beast of Circuit made its international debut in Marik's structure deck, with 2 more appearances of note. In Japan, it debuted as a promo for the game we know as Stairway to the Destined Duel. While this monster is very impractical since it needs a very specific spell card, Temple of the Kings, to be on the field so it can keep existing, it's nonetheless pretty powerful in terms of its effect. If it gets on a roll, it can be fairly hard to stop, outside any 1-for-1 destruction card, especially with the support which can come from Temple of the Kings. Sadly, in this game, Circuit tends to be a little low on AP, and is also very slow despite, well, I said exceptional power, but it's actually pretty crap and it tends to do fairly dumb things. It can still be useful in the player's hands, it's just horrifically impractical. It must be my destiny to fight here today, and fate has already decided the outcome. So, Mai versus a Shizu, the battle begins, and the character that I tend to wish they did more with. Nice, we get our boss music already. Characters I wish they did more with were Divine and Archie in Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. Archie sort of gets reduced to being a glorified cheerleader, which is sad because you can see why you have the plot for Archie developing the way it does. She finally winds up getting used to people who actually value her, who do treat her like a normal person, who aren't just using her as a weapon, basically. I mean, in his own twisted way, Divine does care about her, but at the same time, he is just using her. And that is very, very clear. He's particularly dangerous, but we didn't really get to see him do quite a lot on account of the fact that, well, there were certain real-life circumstances that wound up getting in the way. Kali's Japanese voice actress was involved in some sort of cult along the way, so that's why they didn't have anything that really allowed the Arcadia movement subplot to develop, because I reckon it would have been pretty interesting if they had been able to, and mostly because I could have got more psychic cards out of it, and I absolutely love the psychic monsters. That was probably why I liked Divine as a character, the fact that he got to use the psychic monsters. I really, really like that deck, but yeah, I would definitely agree, hands down, that he's a cruel, unpleasant, and manipulative individual, perfectly demonstrating that sort of classic sociopath element. An incredibly skilled manipulator, a smooth talker, but just uses people, treating them as objects, and anything he can't use, he winds up discarding, which is why he wound up essentially getting himself eaten by a giant lizard. Though he did turn out alright after Misty was defeated, but he wound up getting arrested. I suppose he deserved that. But yeah, it was just kind of unfortunate that after sort of being a serious semi-antagonist, a really dangerous duelist with an incredibly powerful deck, Aki winds up being reduced to a glorified cheerleader. It's just really, really questionable that the person who actually gives you the most time in the spotlight, who lets you show off your powers, and what you can do as a duelist, is the manipulative sociopath. I mean, she's a very good team player, I'm not gonna lie. But it's just kind of unfortunate that she does get relegated. Part of this might have been the fact that Crow wound up being incredibly popular. The Blackwings wound up selling like hotcakes. In all fairness, I've never actually quite worked out how well hotcakes sell on average, because I don't think we have hotcakes here. But either way, the Blackwings sold really well and Crow became a main character. Apparently he was intended to be an antagonist figure, but he wound up becoming a main character on account of the fact that he had popularity power, basically. I admit that they did do some kind of dumb things with the writing in 5Ds, but they did also do some pretty cool things. It's just, I don't think they ever quite matched the first and second season. Everything at the beginning in the Dark Signer arc. I don't think they managed to quite match that. But we did get a hell of a lot of really good cards out of it. That's something, I suppose. But then again, I suppose it is really, really tough to actually get everything just right when it comes to the balance of characters and what they can do. For some reason, a lot of female duelists tend to get the short end of the stick. But at least you do get some fairly competent ones along the way who will show off some good skills. It just all depends on the power of plot armor. Like, we know that Maya's an incredibly capable duelist, but she does wind up getting absolutely thrashed, which is pretty disappointing. The fact she got stuck against Marik was really unfortunate. It's interesting, though, that in the Doma arc, even though it's filler, they actually do explore sort of the fact that losing so many times and everything she suffered at the hands of Marik winds up having a massive psychological effect on Mai. And it would be very interesting to explore that somewhere along the way. They sort of explore that happy-go-lucky element and what happens when the stakes get high, and you can't do that with Jaden. But they haven't done it anywhere near as much with other characters. It's actually quite an interesting aspect that Mai just sort of winds up trying to abandon the crew just to find her strength again. It's almost a little bit like Vegeta selling out to Babidi in a sense. But of course we have Rex and Weevil as the comic relief version of that, even if they do manage to be somewhat dangerous. There we are. Shizu is beaten and we're just sort of wandering around trying to get everything else sorted. So we stopped Tristan's team because there was a bit of a traffic jam. Now we can get going. Better speed it up a bit. And it's time for Tristan. We're up against a fairly tough team. Panther Warrior is a strong opponent, but if we focus our fire, we should be able to hold out alright. Dark Chimera, I think, is the fastest, though. That's right, Dungeon 1. Whoa, camera's going all over the place. Once again, no healers, but geez, you see how strong Panther Warrior generally becomes in the hands of the AI. It's fearsome. I suppose we kind of wind up having situations where a lot of interesting cards can get wasted as well. Because, I mean, it really all depends on what's popular in terms of marketing when it comes to cards having prominence. Some of them will get a much better deal than others. Some just wind up falling by the wayside. Some of the archetypes don't quite work as well as you'd think. There are some really interesting ideas along the way. Probably want to heal Monster Tamer just in case. But yeah, I just wonder why sometimes. There are some cards that don't really work. The Neo-Spacians, it took a long time for them to actually work, and even then they were pretty much a definition of awesome but impractical. Which is just how it goes sometimes. Some things obviously don't work as well in the real life card game because even if a hell of a lot of stuff is incredibly janky and unbalanced, they do have to make it reasonably fair so that some things can be playable. It does mean that some cards will wind up being nowhere near as effective, which is really, really unfortunate. But for one of the things they do wind up skipping out on, I suppose it's probably for good plot reasons that they wind up skipping out on things like 1-for-1 destruction cards. Those have got more popular in the anime as time has gone on and perhaps cards have got a lot stronger. There's a degree of practicality to it all, let's be honest. But it was kind of rare sometimes to actually see cards like Mirror Forms and for practical schemes to wind up appearing, because you can always wind up having some incredibly convoluted strategy on account of the fact it just looks dramatic. But somebody pulls out a 1-for-1 destruction card and you wind up in a lot of strife. Like, that was an interesting thing to bring back 5Ds during Divine's duel with Kali when she has her Fortune Fairy build. She winds up setting everything up, and it does have a key card as its focus. It's got the one that powers them up for winds up giving them attack for each Fortune Fairy on the field or something like that. I can't remember what it does, but it's an integral card, and it just gets wiped out by a standard 1-for-1 destruction card, Psychokinesis, which is an incredibly handy card for Psychic decks in all fairness. Just blow up whatever you need to, and while you do take 1,000 damage, you can wind up getting all that back or using it to your advantage. So, very, very complex strategies do wind up working, but they are also fairly vulnerable to pretty much the basic cards that are pretty much staples in the real-life card game. So they kind of remove those for the sake of making the series entertaining, and I can understand and accept that. It's completely fair. It might seem a little silly, but it's much better to have those complex combos wondering, will this go off? Will something interesting happen? How will they get around it if they don't have those interesting everyday cards? Hey, nice stats. More for Tristan. Of course, this is somewhat mitigated by the fact that a lot of decks just sort of have a tendency to pluck things from their posterior and just make things up as they go along. Nothing there. It is probably about time I started checking for all this. Because I have not been checking. Nothing interesting there. Tristan move across. Now, one of these places we obviously won't get to shop at. Ishizu is meant to be the boss, and Odeon is just a minor character. But that's always the way. Poor old Odeon. What do we got down here? I am looking for some more. Oh, that might be handy. I'll actually take a few copies of Yami and supplement things like Swords of Revealing Light with them, because at least then the enemy is using up all their AP and they're not just sort of sitting there waiting, so if I don't kill them they can launch about 5 attacks and wipe me out. You've got to be pretty careful about these things. So, slowly Axe Raider moves in, and then we can have Joey take on Odeon. We do get a monster from defeating Odeon. There we are. This team, we obviously want to focus on twin-headed... I nearly said twin-headed Thunder Dragon. It's called two-headed King Rex. Alternatively, we can probably take out the 2 Thunder Dragons in a couple of attacks. So there we are. Good, solid hit. Axe Raider should knock that out. There we are. And then I can confuse that one to shut down the fusion. As far as I know, you can't fuse with a monster that is suffering confusion. But yes, two-headed King Rex will get super stamina eventually. So yeah, there are lots of cool cards in the card game that don't actually get to see the light of day in the anime as well. They're not always going to be the most popular. It's a little sad that not everything gets to be famous. But it is nice that there's a good variety of different archetypes you can use along the way. Alright, so it's decided it wants to try and kill it. That's right, it can't actually fuse, yeah. Like I was saying, it has no choice but to kill us. And there we go. Crisis averted. And we can just rack up the damage easy as you please. And more attacks for Rocket Warrior because the turn order is janky. How strong is that thing in terms of attack? Yeah, it's a bit of a dud as far as attack goes. We will axe at the question. And finish it off. There we go. Fairly easy all told. So yeah, I do think it's just nice to actually have a good variety of things. It would be nice if there was a bit more variety, maybe some stranger, rarer monsters along the way. But I suppose you got to go with popularity power. The anime is essentially just an ad. Which I suppose makes sense. You've got to show off the cards you really, really want. Nothing for me there. Do I see what my... No, wait, I needed to go over here. Slowly but surely. Nope, nothing. Still trying to find some more copies of Dragonic Attack, but then again, since they're so expensive and they're so sort of useless in the great scheme of things, given that they don't actually give you... They don't actually give you any power, we really could just wind up putting other items on our dragons. I mean, attacks don't miss a huge amount anyway. But there we are, so what's Odeon's team packing? No healing, strangely enough. But we should have this wrapped up and Marik's army will be in dire straits once we've won this battle. Which will be leading up to the big battle with Marik himself, and then the battle at Mariarden, which will ultimately see us facing Kaiba. So now basically you will have an idea of exactly how the Imperial Order, namely the Ishtars, wound up getting put out of the scene and Yugi no longer had to deal with the very powerful duelist.
No matter what happens, I will continue to fight in order to protect him, even if I spend my whole life as a minor character.
So, final battle for Odeon. He doesn't even get the boss music. I forgot about that. Little underwhelming. Poor Odeon. And let's focus fire on... Just focus fire on the enemy as we need. Look, we've honestly seen this battle so many times before. It's not funny. Despite the fact he's a minor character, Odeon does wind up being a fairly prominent opponent. Because he's fought at the end of Yugi and Kaiba's story, and you fight him 2 or 3 times in Joey's story. So, he's obviously moved up in the world. Well done, Odeon. You're not... Of the minor characters, you are one of the most important, which I understand is not exactly the most comforting thing to hear, but could be worse. Alright, so it's actually bothered to attack us. Usually it does something dumb. Alrighty. You know what? Let's line up this one and drop its attack a little bit, since... Oh, we got a critical on top of that, and of course the one that is just waiting around does get to attack. Oh well, Garuzus can finish it off, so... Alright, Garuzus can finish it off. Thank you, game. Or Axe Raider, one of the two. So yeah, 500 attack point drop. Not much, but at the same time, might just save you in the long battle. We'll see. We shall see. Almost down, and... No, it's actually attacking. It's trying to be sensible. It's trying desperately to be incredibly useful. It's still not great, but it is the monster we wind up taking home with us today. You probably met it earlier on, though. 10 miserable health left. Garuzus doesn't have enough power to break through. Well... Well, I think I'll have Rocket Warrior heal. That should be okay. It's... yeah, there's really not much to say about the battle with Odeon that we haven't said already. Apart from the fact that Odeon is actually being fairly intelligent, not wasting his AP on Tribute Soul. There we are. That should finish embodiment of Apophis. Just. And now we can pour fire onto this big lunker. It might have armor, but we have plenty of attacks where all that came from. And we get a nice lurid green scorpion that can recover health. Alright, still hanging in there. Come on, Axe Raider, let's dish out the damage. Now, it's entirely possible that you may be able to use Goblin's Secret Remedy to wind up removing Super Stamina. Because that removes all status conditions, and if Super Stamina is treated as a status condition, then you should be able to remove it by using Goblin's Secret Remedy. Which is a bit strange, but there you go. Anyway, Odeon is defeated. Joey's team gets even more levels. Doing very, very well for itself. And there we are. Okay, Marik's barely got legs to stand on now. Let's finish this once and for all. And we get Circuit. So, the showdown with Marik lies ahead. Thank you very much for joining me. Until next time, this is Red 2, returning to base.